by making sure that you're staying present and you're ready to ask some questions because we love questions. All righty then, I've got about everything set up window-wise. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital. We are a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share our knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement and learn more at www.togetherindigital.com. Today, I'm really excited because we are talking about what women want. When I started talking to Eliza and I saw her idea for She Speaks and the way that she's leveraging insights and data and elevating women as influencers, it really just made sense for us to not just get on a podcast together and talk. I mean, actually, I've been a guest on hers. She's now a guest on ours, but finding more ways to collaborate and work together. The majority of our buying power comes from women, and yet still so few women are represented in our industry in digital marketing and advertising. So I'm super excited to introduce all of you to the founder and CEO of She Speaks. Eliza has built the largest, most diverse community of female consumers and influencers in America, with a network reach of more than 300 million consumers per month and growing. Pretty impressive. Eliza is a champion for women's voices across all media, digital, social, mobile, and now through her podcast, She Speaks. Be sure to take a listen. In She Speaks, Eliza has created an award-winning platform that inspires women to express their creativity, ideas, and opinions, and provide them opportunities to expand their own personal influence and mobilize their social influence. Eliza, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. As I said, it's nice to have you hanging out on my turf for the day. I loved seeing and being a part of She Speaks. And again, I highly recommend the podcast or the LinkedIn Lives if any of you have a chance to take a listen. Now, many of us who come into the space for Together Digital, we are definitely career-minded and focused ladies. So I would love to have you share with our listeners more about your career journey, how you kind of got into the space. So just to get a little bit more of that background.
Sure. Well, I've only worked two places in my whole career. I'm what you call a marathoner, I guess. Marathoner. I started my career at American Express, loved working there. I was in the marketing department, I guess, and at Amex, kind of everyone does marketing. It's, you talk to anyone at Amex, and because it is such a brand, it is such a brand-focused company, I think everyone feels like they are stewards of the brand, which is wonderful. And I had the chance to, launch new credit cards, the Blue Card. I worked on the launch of the Black Card, which is also known as the Centurion Card. And I loved working there. It was a great place to be. But I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And as much as you can have an entrepreneurial spirit in corporate America, you can't, you're not technically an entrepreneur if you're not, if you're not doing a side hustle, let's say, and creating a business. If you're, it's hard to be feeling like you're scratching that itch, so to speak. So I left and started my company, She Speaks, and that was. We were in beta in 2007, and we launched after doing our beta in 2008. We've been doing it ever since. So the company started as a research platform, and it was, I know, taking everyone back to 2007, but back when digital was really just kind of emerging in terms of how people were going to use it. And I felt that companies were missing the mark with women. I worked at a company that was historically, the customer base was male oriented, but over time, Amex was one of the many places that was realizing that women make an enormous number of the decisions, financial decisions, the purchasing decisions. They were kind of known as the CFO of the household. So I thought, well, if a company like American Express which is so historically male oriented in terms of the consumers, the customers, is focused on women and winning with women, then everybody must be focused on winning with women. But I felt like a lot of the marketing I was seeing out in the marketplace was missing the mark with women. Back then, there was a lot of pink washing, what I called pink washing, which is just, oh, if we make it pink, they will come, women will be interested. And I'm being a little bit hyperbolic with that, but hopefully like the point comes across, which is that there were a lot of stereotypes of women that I knew were not fresh and what was interesting to women and compelling. So I thought we could do it better. And so when we launched as a research platform. I went out to a group of women I knew and said, hey, I'm starting this platform where you could join and I'll send you free products. And then I just want your honest opinion about them. I want you to tell me what you think of them. And, tell me what, no, don't pull any punches, just tell us what you think. And we very quickly grew the community. And what I realized was that a lot of the women who were joining our community were what you now call influencers. But back then they were called like socially savvy or mommy bloggers. There were all these different names for them. But what we realized was there was a great opportunity to not just get feedback and insights from the women, but also to do this kind of new form of marketing where we allowed the women to help us talk about the products. Once we got the products where we wanted them, how do we use the community and tap into the community to build awareness for those products and services? So fast forward to where we are today, and the majority of the work we do is in the influencer space where women, we pay thousands upon thousands of women for the opportunity to tap into their content knowledge, how to create really awesome content, and then share that content and distribute that content on social media. And we do that organically through their channels as well as through paid. So that's kind of the whole arc of my career.
That's beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, I think what you've taken and done so early on was just so thoughtful, insightful, and intentional. It's no wonder that you're still around. It's no wonder that you've grown the community in such a way because, I feel like, in general, we are very community minded. I see it every day in the sense that, women want to give and share experience and opinions and ideas, and often they're not given the space to do that. So it is not just only a smart, way to go about building a business for the sake of, data and insights, but also, lifting the voices of women and finding a way to empower them. So again, super smart. And again, I think well ahead of the curve because I remember 2006, 2007, digital was, relatively non-existent. So way to go on having such a brilliant insight and idea and acting on it. And obviously, I know it's never a straight line or an easy road. But as an entrepreneur, we do have lots of women in our group who are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or kind of standing on that ledge about to make that leap. I would love to hear a little bit more about what are some of the biggest lessons or maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned while running your own business for those who are kind of in that space?
The biggest thing for me was that failure isn't fatal. I think because I spent half of my career in corporate America, where at the time, you did not walk around with a sign that said this project failed that I was leading or whatever. You just didn't do that, right? It was not, failure was, and think about our schooling. We grow up as young people learning to not fail. Don't fail, right? But what I found in entrepreneurship was that especially if you're doing something different, you find a lot of entrepreneurs, we find a problem that we're looking to solve, right? That's why we do what we're doing. There's a need. We feel like there's something that we're trying to make better. And when you do that, you're pushing yourself, and maybe it hasn't been done before, you are going to fail. And that is part of learning and getting better. And it is just all about how do you move through that failure. And one of the other things that I would just say about entrepreneurship is it is in any given day, it is like a roller coaster. Like you can start a day thinking, oh my God, look at this, we're having such a great day. And then like something else. So I do feel like, for me at least, corporate America was a little bit more stable because, they're just the things didn't like move as quickly. But in entrepreneurship and running your own business, things do move much more quickly. And so you can have in any given day 5 things you get right and 3 things that you get wrong. I mean, that is just part of the process. And it's learning to, that's why I talked about the failure part. It's even in any given day, as I said, you're getting things right, you're getting things wrong. It is part of that journey. And you just have to learn to embrace that, that is part of the experience, and to give yourself grace, because you're going to get it wrong. You are going to get it wrong. And that's okay. That's part of the process of learning to fix it so that you get it better the next time. So I hope that's helpful and resonates with other people who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I do, totally. Absolutely. I think one of the things I struggle with in our kind of just society and the way that we see women on a pedestal when they've reached a certain point in their lives or careers is that we only see the success, not the strife. And I think if we can be more open in talking about the times in which we failed or the things that we've learned, to let women know that there's no sense in not trying because you're afraid to fail. Like failure is a part of how you got there and to where you are. And without taking that risk, you're never going to you're not going to see any kind of growth within your business, within yourself, without taking that kind of a risk. And I just feel like, in our like Insta-perfect world, it's just so easy to see, women successful and want to talk about the success and focus on the story of success versus sharing that, sometimes things suck. Sometimes I make really bad decisions and I learned something really important from it, but that's what I need to take away. It doesn't hold me back from continuing to try. So I think that that's wonderful advice, Lisa. So thank you. As I mentioned earlier, and you even said, the number specifically hovers in and around 80 to 81% of women have the buying power in the household. This number has not budged that I'm aware of in over a decade. And so being mindful of the concerns of women, which platforms that they're using, it really ought to be important to any and every marketer, regardless of their gender. This is their consumer we're talking about. So I'm going to dig in a little bit to your She Speaks survey, which is something that you've published a couple of years in a row now, and we've just come up with some predictions for 2023. But before we get kind of into those results, I would love to hear a little bit more about how that survey came to be and how it's been leveraged throughout the years.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we started as a research company. So today, but it's still part of our DNA. Everything we do is grounded in insights to start with, and that is and that is a really important part of it, because if we take our eye off of the ever-changing needs of women, then we're not going to be nearly as good at what we do from a marketing standpoint and also serving this community. We think of our role as serving this community of women that we've built over time. So the insights is a big part of it, and asking women what's going on with them. So probably about 14 years ago, we started doing our prediction survey. It became known as our prediction survey, but it was like at the end of the year, moving into the new year, we would say to women, tell us what's on your mind. Like, how are you feeling about the year that's ahead? How are you, and across different aspects, monetarily, emotionally, what are you excited about? All of that. And we found that by doing this, we could start to see trends over time of what was going on with women. And what I will tell you, something just interesting that we saw, because I do think it's worth noting for marketers, is that but we've been asking women to tell us their top emotions, to choose their top emotions all for years, right? So we give them a list of emotions. all different kinds of emotions. And usually what we would call positive emotions were the ones that rose to the top. I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, like those are typically, as you move into a new year, the things that women were feeling.
Sure.
As soon as COVID hit, we started asking, we were doing these surveys every 2 weeks because we were really trying to understand how are women moving through this. And what we started to see was that uncertainty was the number one emotion. And that has persisted. The reason I'm bringing this up is because it affects where we are today.
Yeah.
That has persisted for the last 3 years. Like that one of the top 4 emotions. Now, thankfully, it's not the top anymore. In the last year, uncertainty has moved down to like 2 or 3 in the list. But for a while, that was the number one thing. And it still continues because we have had so many starts and stops. But what that does to a woman, a human being, but obviously our expertise is with women, what that does is it makes you feel like you're not on very stable ground. And that is what really, I think, is influencing what people were focused on for 2023. So when we asked women, what do you want 2023 to be about for you? Women told us it was 2 major things. One is reconnecting. They have felt very disconnected from community, from friends, from family. It's and it's not that people haven't seen each other, started to see other people, but that feeling of, I can always see you. I can see you without worrying, grandma, that I'm going to give you COVID, that, I'm going to get you sick. These things have been on women's minds. And so the first thing that we found for 2023 is that women really are looking to reconnect. And if you're a brand, think about the fact that people want that. They want connection. They are looking to connect in a way that they have not in the last 3 years. The second thing that we found is that because women felt so stuck, and this wasn't one of the top emotions during COVID, or during the height of COVID, women felt very stuck in their homes, not being able to go out and do things. The 2023 women want to learn something new, a new skill. And from a work standpoint, they want to learn new skills. From a personal standpoint, they want to get a new hobby, learn something new, glass blowing, whatever it is. They are looking to expand their horizons. So, and this is definitely dialed up for going into 2023 versus how it's been in years before. So that, I think, is really what's on people's minds moving into 2023. In terms of like what issues are on their minds, the economy was number one. That was by far the number one concern women had. Health was a distant number 2. So this just shows that, and because health used to be the number 1, now it's moved down, and it's a distant number 2, that people are less and less worried about their health, their family's health, but the economy is now top of mind for them. But when we ask them about their own personal finances, more than double the number of women said that they felt like they personally are going to do better financially this year than the women who said they were going to do worse. So we call that the optimism gap, that there is this feeling that I know that the economy's not doing well, and I'm concerned about the economy not doing well, but I personally think I'm going to do better this year than I did last year.
That is interesting. What do you think, where's that gap coming from? Is that just, again, the optimism of kind of being more focused on reconnection and learning as an opportunity for that, or?
Yeah, it's interesting because we just completed another study where we saw another gap between like perception and reality. We can talk about that. But I think what happens for us is we consume media. We see that everyone's saying the economy is really in dire, like we're really worried everything is, and part of that is is reality that overarching the economy is not doing as well and things are slowing down in different areas. But I think that the reality for women, for the women, you know, we had about 1,400 or so women who took the survey. The reality for women is that they are actually feeling more optimistic about their prospects, and they are actually doing better now maybe than they were like a year or 2 years ago. So again, that disconnect between what they're hearing is going on and then the reality of what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So that's the gap we're talking about.
Interesting. Yeah, I love and appreciate the optimism. And I do find it, especially in the area we're in. I mean, tech specifically has been hit in so many ways between the whole, like the Silicon Valley Bank, tech layoffs across the board from major organizations. That area in particular, I think, has been, overwhelmingly hit by the economy, from overhiring, overpaying, lots of different random things that are happening there. I'm kind of curious too, just for a second, I want to back up, because a lot of us, people who work in digital marketing and advertising, I think we're innately curious about data and how data is collected, sourced, and then analyzed. I'm kind of curious over the years. I mean, you're obviously trying to create as much apples to apples as you can year over year to see the trends, to see the comparisons. But I'm curious as to, like, how have you optimized the survey over the years and sort of been able to kind of source more insightful, either, qualitative or quantitative data from your surveys?
Yeah, I think the thing that we have learned and we've gotten better at is, what are the questions that are going to elicit real answers? Not, because what happens for anyone who is kind of done market research, and maybe you've got lots of people who have done research in the past, frequently people tell you aspirationally what they want or how they think they should be. And so when you're in a research environment, and what we have learned is to ask questions from both perspectives, like asking, okay, what do you think you should be most concerned about, and where you get the perceptions that I was talking about earlier, and then asking them more reality-based questions of what is going on for them. So I think that's the reason we often have what we call these gaps in what women are either aspirationally thinking for themselves, or what they think they should answer versus the reality. So I'd say we have gotten really, over time, much better at making sure we are posing questions in different ways, so that you can sort of sift through what people think they should be saying versus what their reality and what they are dealing with might be. So I'd say that's the biggest thing that we have learned to do over time. And it's been a really useful tool in terms of really being able to sift through what's going on with women.
That's great, because like you said, we tend to be aspirational optimistic. So hearing where we want to be versus where we truly are isn't going to give us the insights we need to kind of see those gaps that you mentioned earlier. So that's fantastic. I'm kind of curious too, over the years, what is some of the data that has surprised you the most? It doesn't even have to be from this past year.
The stuff that surprises me the most is really just how on target things are. So we do a holiday shopping study as well. We do it every year. We've done it every year for many years, and learned, again, how to ask the questions. Yeah. But we've been able to correctly predict directionally, will consumer spending be up, down, or flat, because of us getting better at how do we ask the questions to understand not just what do you say you're going to spend, but comparison questions too. Like, thinking about what you're going to spend this year versus what you spent last year, thinking about the categories, like really delving into it so that you can tease out what's going to happen. And you need as much of the questions of like, what do I think I'm going to do, but also getting into details with people so that they can answer the questions in terms that are relative to them. You have to be able to do it in that way. So I would say it has been surprising to me that we are able to kind of very much see over time that the predictions of what people say they're going to do is consistent with what actually happens as it relates to spending. So that has been the most surprising thing for me, that we have consistently seen that to be the case, because you do have so much that goes into surveying, right? And how people answer questions. So yeah, I'd say that's, I think the thing that has surprised me the most.
Yeah, and I mean, we had some similar data. I mean, it was a smaller data set of folks answering the surveys, but you talked earlier about like learning, being kind of there on the top of their list, reconnecting and learning, and personal professional development. Like we've got, that's a lot of what drives women that come to a community like both of ours. And one of the things that we had asked was, how much time do you spend a month on professional and personal growth? And then we followed it up with, how much time do you want to be spending? And we were really surprised to find that they were already spending a few hours a month, but they wanted to be, leveraging significantly more. And my guess is that when we go back and ask them again, how much time did you spend, that might have increased, because now they've stated it, like they for themselves have realized, oh, I've kind of set like a time or money budget in my mind, and so I'm going to follow through with it. So I think it is kind of cool to see how you can, look to by kind of putting those kinds of reality versus perspective questions together, start to see opportunities for trends. So that's really awesome. We talked for a minute too about the most pressing topic for women being the economy. I wanted to come back to that for just a minute to find out if there's any other qualitative data that you got from this concern for women about the economy. Although, like I said, they seem like they felt pretty optimistic despite the economy. Was there anything else you wanted to add about that?
I think that it affects so many things, though, especially since I spent a lot of years at a financial services company, very much dependent and focused on consumer spending. It does have a huge impact on businesses, because how people view, and this is the thing that I think is really interesting, and we've seen in the data, is that you might say, I think I'm very worried about the economy. I'm very worried about it. But if I say to you, how are you feeling about how you're doing personally? How are your finances? How do you feel about that? If you say you're feeling decent about your prospects and you actually think that you're going to do better, that impacts your spending much more than what you think is going on in the macro economy. And we've seen this across everything. When we ask people questions about how the government works, you see a huge difference in how does your local government work? How does your state government work? How does the national government? So people have very different perspectives, and the more personal it is, the closer it is to what you deal with on a day-to-day basis and what your reality is. That's the thing that's going to impact your decisions, right? That's what is going to, and I think that's my biggest aha from the many years I've spent doing research, is that people will tell you that they're concerned about something, but unless it's impacting them on a personal level, it's probably not going to have a huge impact on their decisions, whether that's how they're going to vote, whether that's how they're going to spend their money, whether it's anything that they do on an individual basis.
That's so interesting. And I mean, I think it definitely goes to show you that the things that feel further from our control are the things that we might worry about. But you're right, we're not letting impact day to day. Gosh, I would love to just spend some time unpacking that, even from like a political and voting standpoint, because
Mhm.
yeah, women show up to the freaking polls.
Yeah, well, and
And
I want to mention something because we just we've been asking women about who they're going to vote for years, right? Like how they think about voting, what impacts their votes. And one of the things that we saw really acutely after the overturn of Roe versus Wade was this perceptible increase in women across political beliefs,
yeah,
but mind you, feeling like their voices matter less in the political and the government and in that arena than it did before.
Yep.
Than they did before. And I think until it became a very real thing that having the wrong, or not wrong, but having people who may not agree with your perspective being the ones making decisions that would impact you personally, or maybe your daughter or your sister or your cousin, whatever, more personally, then it got real. And I think that is a really interesting thing for people to understand, certainly for people who are running for office to understand. Women are across political affiliations we're very impacted by that reality of the overturn of Roe versus Wade, more so than I think we thought, based on all of the surveying that we've done over the years.
Yeah, no, and you're right. It lines up all of a sudden what feels very macro and not close to you and out of your control. It's in your daily life now, so you can't ignore it. But it is to that degree in which I think it's really important for us to remember that. Like sometimes those things that feel so distant and out of our control, that sometimes our actions and decisions can actually inform the consequences of the macro, even if it does feel bigger than us ourselves, which is exactly why, what we're trying to do with Together Digital, you're doing what She Speaks, is hopefully empowering women to feel more comfortable and confident in sharing and doing what they need to. That's a tremendous insight. Thank you, Aliza. We talked a few minutes ago about how, health kind of was taking a little bit of a backseat, reconnection and learning, and kind of moving towards the top, which really excites me because we spend a lot of time and energy, obviously, trying to create space for women to do that. Was there anything else that you felt like kind of shifted or changed that we didn't talk about earlier over the last year?
I think that some of this will impact how we focus on social media. So one of the things that we're also seeing as I think women are, because they're looking to learn something new, YouTube is a platform that is known for basically, you can go there and like type in, I want to learn how to, and you can find a video about it. So what I would say is, I think you're going to see that those platforms are going to get more popular and used increasingly because of what we're trying to do, which is like learn new skills, and we're curious. We want to learn more. And that's not to say that the other platforms are suddenly going to just drop off. But I do think that it is going to maybe surprisingly give people a perspective of, I want to shift my focus to being on these platforms that have longer form content, right? Because we've been in an environment where short form content is the thing that people are focused on. But when you want to learn something new, you will likely shift to a longer form content to do that.
Yeah, we'll get more to social media platforms and trends in those spaces in a moment. I'm kind of curious, like outside of YouTube, did the women that you surveyed share any other ways in which they plan on doing that reconnection and learning, and on kind of what levels?
Yeah, in terms of the reconnection, I think too that one area that seemed to pop for us is experiences. So if you are, again, a company that sells products, women seem to be very intrigued by experiences in this right now. Not necessarily the thing, like I want that thing. I want an experience And so, like, an excursions, maybe not, necessarily that they're going to spend a ton of money going on vacations, but what they do, a day trip here to go do that idea of having experiences and being in those experiences is something that we saw as a point that came up in, one of the things that came up in that same research that we were talking about.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think brands should get really excited about that opportunity, because doing experiential marketing, had to take a back seat for a year and a half, 2 years or so. And I can't even imagine what it was like for those folks. But yeah, here you have this opportunity. I think, whether you're something like a brewery, candle company, it doesn't matter like what kinds of hands-on, even learning experiences. If you couple that opportunity to reconnect and learn something new and have an experience, it's a huge opportunity. So yeah, I'm kind of, yeah, that's a good trend. I hope. Well, and brainstorming on it, it's giving me ideas.
Yeah, and even thinking about, let's say you're a food brand, and and you're marketing a food product. It's about people coming together, having an experience around the food product. It's not just like, oh, this is like, yeah, do people care if it's healthy? Oh yeah, those are kind of like table stakes. I think that the way to talk about it is if you can share with the target customer, this is the experience that you're going to have. This is the benefit of what it is that I'm selling you, or that I want you to buy. You're going to have a lot more success with women if you can articulate that. And I think that's increasingly going to be something that you'll start to see, hopefully, from companies that are paying attention to this.
I agree. That's wonderful. Speaking of, I, again, no necessary affiliation with, but if you are looking for excursions and experiences, I had the pleasure of learning about this group called Explorer Chicks. That is a lot of fun. I think they run kind of travel opportunities throughout the world, and they've got a number of different packages. You can go as a solo woman, you can go with friends. I am kind of sort of obsessed with them. I'm like, it's one of those ideas that I was like, damn, I wish I'd had that, because they will go to Belize, they will do backpacking in Red River Gorge here in the Midwest. So it's like there's a lot of opportunities and it's all women. And you basically, like I said, you can go solo, you can go with others, but you really get the opportunity to connect with people and experience something new, because I think we are obviously, after 2.5 years or so, we're experience starved, and we're not looking for the same, in my opinion. I don't think we're looking for the same kind of quote unquote experiences as before. I don't think people want to go places just to be seen. They want to show up and really have a good experience, feel something, and know that the time that they're spending, away from friends and family to have this experience is a worthwhile endeavor. And I even see this with networking too, where people are like, I don't want to just walk around a room and try to make small talk with people, like kill me. I would really rather go to something that feels more meaningful, more engaging, more interactive, more experience-based, than kind of just throwing people into a gray room, giving them drinks and be like, have that. People are really being more, in my opinion, and I'm not sure if it's showed in the data, but more intentional with how they're spending their time.
Yeah. Yeah. And Amy, I'm so glad you brought up that word, meaningful. There is that is one of the things that we also have been finding is that people are looking, COVID had that effect too, that people got very real about their mortality during that period of time. And what that has done is it has made women, at least that we've surveyed, feel this increased desire, more so than they did 5 years ago, to find meaningful and to find what is meaningful for them in their lives and to be in service of that. And that has been a change too, that I think is really important for professionals, for all of us to kind of understand what is going on.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I've seen it time and time again over the last 3 years. I would joke and say that COVID kind of threw us all into a second, or maybe sometimes first time midlife crisis, in the sense that we are facing our mortality, and we're looking and saying, so the two things I did hear a lot was meaning and purpose. and especially when you're dealing with workplace environments and how they managed COVID protocols and communications, how they discussed the murder of George Floyd in the workplace, how they talked about social injustice and human rights, the overturn of Roe versus Wade. This is all stuff that women are listening to and paying attention to, and employers, in my opinion, need to start listening to and paying attention to and finding the right ways to address them. Otherwise, they're going to continue to see women leaving the workforce or leaving their spaces and going either creating their own or just moving on to someplace altogether. So yeah. Awesome. Let's talk social media. We all love it, right? Today, all the platforms, there's so many of them out there. For women though, what are some of the most popular forms or what are some of the most popular platforms? Where do they stand? And what has changed over the last few years? Because, lots been happening in the social media world.
Okay. Yeah. So, we're basically seeing that women are telling us that they will continue to use. So Instagram and TikTok have seen big increases. Facebook has declined. It will continue to decline in terms of what we're seeing. People telling us their usage of Facebook. Instagram will continue to have steady interest. The same with TikTok, seeing more and more people adopting on that platform. The platform that we see having the biggest decrease and the most negativity. So not only do we ask people, where do you see yourself? Where do you spend your time? Where do you see yourself spending less time in the coming year? We ask them those questions, but we also ask them how they feel about how they feel on the platform. Mm-hmm. So the platform that is getting a big thumbs down is Twitter. And there's a lot, I think that, what women say is that more women said that they felt that platform left them feeling like a void, like they're angry or they don't feel good after they get off using the platform, then said they felt enriched them. So anytime you see more people giving a platform negative grades than those giving it positive, emotion, I'm talking right now just about how they feel. Yeah. We see that is like, you're going to start to see a decline unless something radically changes, right? If something radically changes, then you can obviously change people's minds. But right. Women were definitely telling us that Twitter was the platform they were planning to decrease their usage in the most and made them feel the worst. Mm-hmm. YouTube was the one that we saw where YouTube already is, by the way, the platform that people say they have used the most frequently. Now, that doesn't mean they are spending the most time on YouTube. It just means that most people will have some occasion to go to YouTube to look something up or to watch a YouTube video or engage on YouTube versus some of the other platforms. So we definitely see that YouTube is, and maybe consistent with the wanting to learn something new, is the one that people plan to increase their usage in the most. And as I said, I think that the one that's going to see the biggest decline, if nothing changes, is going to be Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's super surprising, honestly, the whole Twitter aspect. I think it is, you think about the content in this space, I think we're all trying to be more intentional about where we're putting our time and focus. And I think women have become especially attuned to that. Like, what is the space for? Is it creating positivity? Is it creating change? Is it in a space that fills my mind, body, and soul with, aspiration or excitement or interest? Or is it just a platform for, hate speech effectively, and I think the changes at Twitter and then the way Elon kind of managed his team and employees just in my opinion, screamed toxic masculinity to like all of the amazing male managers out there. I mean, just really painting a negative picture of what it means to come in and try to take the reins of a company over. And the whole thing, I have like a whole drafted blog post somewhere that I don't think I ever published about it. But I think, again, consumers, specifically women, we are attuned to that. We care about meaning, we care about purpose. So the social media platforms and the brands that we engage with, if we don't see a sense of a shared purpose or a shared meaning, then we'll disengage. and so not creating a space where people feel safe to interact and engage. It does make a lot of sense to me why people are kind of coming off of Twitter. And I do see, it seems like a lot of people are coming back to Instagram. And then I love that. Yeah, if you're a brand and you're not creating YouTube content, if you're not engaging on YouTube content, we already know from a search perspective, it's a smart way to go, but knowing that more consumers are going there, and really thinking about how, when, and where you're leveraging that platform, I think is important. I think we all get caught up in the shiny newness of TikTok. And I think it's great. I was really surprised to learn that like most Gen Zers will do search not through Google, but through TikTok. That still kind of breaks my brain, even though I love TikTok and I use it as well. I don't see it to me as like a search platform. Don't know that you can top the Googs, but I do think it's really interesting to kind of keep that in mind, but then also have that perspective of what you just said. It's like you're coupling the idea of learning and knowing that's a growing trend among this market, and hey, YouTube, great platform. Mm-hmm. Are you leveraging those two together? So really great way to kind of bring to life, not just like the insight based on not just the data, I'm sorry, but the insight that kind of goes along with it as to why you need to maybe be spending and investing more time in YouTube. And also YouTube breaks my brain in the sense that my children, like that's all they watch. They don't even want to watch regular TV anymore. And you have all these YouTube influencers and YouTube celebrities that make millions. And I'm like, whoa, this is just, yeah, it's fascinating. That's a whole other topic for another day though. I want to make sure we have time for questions from our live audience as well. Let's talk about, for just a second, I'm going to go ahead and encourage our live listening audience to ask some questions. And then I'm also going to ask you, Aliza, about this reality gap that you are seeing. So can you tell us a little bit more about the reality gap, what that means, how it kind of came to fruition in this last year's set of predictions? And then after that, we'll take some questions from the audience if they have them.
Sure. So we just released a study about women and community and work. And we really honed in on 3 areas: the workplace, the community aspect of their lives, and then political realm. And one of the things that we found is that it's this thing that we're calling a reality gap. And that is where when we ask women, for example, do you think that things are better, it's easier for women to get ahead in the workplace now than it was 10 years ago, you have more than 3/4 of women saying yes. So, 76% of women said they think it's easier now to get ahead in the workplace than it was 10 years ago. But when we ask them if they agree or do they see that women are not as well compensated as men are for equal work in their experiences, 87% of them said yes, we are not as compensated. We are not compensated as well and equally as men doing similar work. So we saw it there. We saw it as it related to household chores, things that go on in the house. When we ask people, do you think that we're getting to pay equity? And, we have more than half of the women saying, yeah, we're closer than we've ever been to closing the pay equity gap. But when in reality, when we said to them, what about you personally? They said, I know I'm being paid less than men who do the same job as I do. So we kind of consistently, and we saw this in home, in the stuff around the house too. We said, is work-life balance better now than it was 10 years ago? And you had, almost 3/4 of women saying, yes, work-life balance is better than it's ever been. But when we then said to them, well, okay, thinking about your personal situation in your home, who does the majority of the chores and the housework in your home? 71% of them said I do, versus like my male counterpart in the home. So this is why we saw it across so many different categories, that when you ask people their perception of how things are now versus how they were, they're like, it's better. But the reality for them is that it's not really measurably better than it was before.
And this is where I think it's so important for women to be okay and vulnerable. It's not being bitchy. It's not complaining when you talk about the obvious gaps in your household with other women. I think because the grass always looks greener on the other side. And again, this whole idea of success without strife. Oh, look, her house is great. It's always clean, blah, blah, blah. Like you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes until women open up and get vulnerable and share that. And the fact that, when you do look at the statistics of the numbers, the pay gap has pretty much stayed the same over the last 20 years. Women still get paid 82 cents to the dollar. White women, 82 cents to the dollar for every man. And then the invisible and emotional labor that women put into not just only household work and chores, but like who's the secretary of the house? Who's keeping track of the calendar? If you happen to have children, who knows when birthdays are? Who's scheduling doctor's appointments? All of these things are, labor and are not just physically draining, but mentally draining. And when we're not talking about that invisible work, the volunteering that we do and whatnot, when we don't have dads volunteering to be on the friggin' PTO, PTA, it's like, these are the kinds of things it's like expected of the women to do, but then we're not discussing it with the men, or we're holding back from encouraging them to say like, hey, you know what? Why don't you take over the laundry? Why don't you cook a few times a week? Because God forbid you just move over and kind of let them. So sometimes it's a matter of us kind of holding on to the control and like the stories we've been told in the households we were brought up in. And the half of it is like, we're just worried that, they might not do it as well or as fast as we would. And that's an excuse enough for us to continue to burn ourselves out. So you can tell I feel passionate about this. I hear it, I see it a lot of really talented, smart women who just don't take a moment to recognize for themselves and for each other how much more invisible and emotional labor that we are doing. And you're not alone. If you're that 71%, and clearly you're not alone. And so like the grass isn't greener on the other side. I don't really think it's easier. The cost of childcare is another thing you can throw into there when it comes to dealing with all of us being shut down for COVID and kids at home, who was doing the majority of the childcare. When it comes to rising costs of healthcare, who's taking a pay cut or leaving a job or going part-time to be home with the kids because it's not affordable.
Yeah.
It's the women.
Yeah.
It's the women. So I think I'm really glad that, as painful as it is to talk about these things, I'm really glad that you guys are not just finding the data and the research, but really looking at those gaps to say, perception is not unfortunately always reality. And the only way it's going to change is if we actually talk about it, because nobody's going to pay attention. It's called invisible work for a reason. It's called emotional labor for a reason.
Right.
It's not tangible. Yep. So by talking about it, getting a little pissed off about it, like I do, hopefully it starts to help you realize, that it's really, it's not an anomaly.
Yeah.
You're not the exception.
That is what we're seeing. So definitely don't feel alone if that's how you're feeling.
Yes, exactly. And ask for help if you need it. Delegate some stuff, we're not saving lives here. Unless you are saving lives, then don't delegate that if that's your job. But otherwise, it's okay to delegate. All right, Lisa, this has been such a good conversation.
Thank you.
Do one last check to make sure there's no questions from the audience. I hope all of you found this, it's not just about being encouraging and warm and fuzzy. I want to we got to start a fire in y'all's bellies about, the conversations that Lisa's group, like She Speaks, is, helping to facilitate the voices that need to be heard, because, we are just talking about women in general. We're not even adding intersectionality into this. And that's like a whole other number of layers. So really appreciate all the work that you're doing with She Speaks.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you for having me on to talk about it, and happy to answer questions if people want to know more about the studies.
Yes. And Julie, as always, for all of those listening through the live listening audience, it's in the chat, all of the links in order to connect with Elisa to see the summary of predictions for 2023. And then if you sign up for their email, you will also get the results of their latest study in your inbox. These are great tools to take to your office, whether you're on the agency or the brand side, you're servicing clients, whatever that might be. This is really good information for you to have at your disposal. So thank you again. I should also say before we hop off here, thank you to Cohatch, our partner, for our Together Digital podcast. I'm hanging out today in the Moon Room, recording from here. I meant to say that at the beginning. I just got really excited about taking these questions in this conversation with you, Lisa. But yeah, I want to bring it back to this awesome space that they are allowing us to use. I'm excited to be able to have a fun little space to do our recording in. So thank you, Cohatch. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Elisa, I hope we get to talk again soon.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.